The Odyssey is Homer's epic story of war, wandering, loyalty, and the long struggle to return home. In this retelling, we will explore, discuss, and summarize the complete journey. This journey will cover all 24 books and the ending of the epic, so it will reveal the entire story. What follows is an educational retelling and analysis expressed in fresh language, not a complete translation, and not a substitute for reading the work itself. Odysseus has been away for 20 years, spending 10 years at war in Troy and another 10 wandering on the road back to Ithaca. The Odyssey does not present those years in a straight chronology. Books 1 through 4 follow Telemachus in the present. Books 5 through 8 bring Odysseus to the center, and books 9 through 12 are Odysseus's own account of earlier events. From book 13 onward, the paths of father, mother, and son gradually converge on Ithaca, so we will preserve the epic's nonlinear order and make every shift in time clear. Book 1. After Troy has fallen, the poet asks the muse to tell of Odysseus, the resourceful wanderer who learned the ways of many peoples and struggled to save his crew. His efforts failed because the men brought ruin upon themselves by slaughtering the sacred cattle of Helios. The poem therefore reveals the crew's fate before explaining the choices that led to it. Odysseus will survive, but none of his companions will return with him. While Poseidon is away feasting among the Ethiopians, the other gods meet on Olympus. Zeus recalls Aegisthus, who ignored a divine warning, took Agamemnon's wife, killed the returning king, and was later punished by Orestes. Athena accepts that lesson about human responsibility, then asks why Odysseus, unlike Aegisthus, remains trapped against his will. Zeus agrees that Hermes will order Calypso to release him, while Athena goes to Ithaca to awaken his son. Disguised as Mentes, an old guest friend of the family, Athena reaches Odysseus's palace and finds the suitors consuming its livestock and whine as though they own the place. Telemachus alone notices the stranger at the gate. He welcomes the visitor, takes the spear, offers food before asking any questions, and seats the guest away from the suitors' noise. His proper hospitality exposes their abuse of the same code. In private, Telemachus admits that his father's uncertain fate has left him powerless. The suitors are exhausting the estate. Penelope is pressed to remarry, and he cannot even be certain that he is truly Odysseus's son, since no child can prove his own father. Mentes insists that his appearance and spirit reveal the family likeness. Hope becomes not a vague wish, but a reason to investigate. Athena tells him to call an assembly, order the suitors out, and sail first to Nestor at Pylos and then to Menelaus at Sparta. If Odysseus is dead, Telemachus must honor him with a funeral and allow Penelope to marry. If he lives, the son must endure and defend the household. The goddess offers Orestes as the model of an heir who acted and earned renown. Then she departs in the form of a bird, and Telemachus understands that a god has visited him. He returns to the hall as Phemius sings of the painful homecomings from Troy. Penelope comes down and asks the bard to choose another subject, but Telemachus says the singer is not to blame for the suffering assigned by Zeus. He asks his mother to return to her rooms and declares that public speech and authority in the house now belong to him. Astonished by the change in her son, Penelope withdraws. Telemachus then warns Antinous, Eurymachus, and the other suitors that he will summon the Ithacan assembly at dawn and demand that they feast at their own expense elsewhere. They mock his new boldness and probe for the advisor behind it, but he does not reveal Athena. His public challenge has changed the conflict. Men who treated him as a harmless boy now begin to watch him. Any journey must therefore be concealed. Late that night, the loyal nurse Eurycleia lights Telemachus to his room, prepares his bed, and locks the door. Her care quietly contrasts with the disloyal servants who will later assist the suitors. Telemachus lies awake, arranging in his mind everything Athena has said. At sunrise, thought will become political action. Book 2. At dawn, Telemachus calls the first Ithacan assembly in many years. The elder Aegyptius asks who has summoned them and remembers his son Antiphus, who sailed with Odysseus and would become the last man devoured by the Cyclops in his cave. Telemachus takes his father's seat and scepter, then names 2 disasters. He has lost a just father, and uninvited men are destroying his inheritance. A private household crisis is already tied to the wider losses of Odysseus's expedition. Antinous answers by blaming Penelope. She promised to choose a husband after weaving a burial shroud for the aged Laertes, yet for 3 years she wove by day and secretly undid the work at night. In the 4th year, a serving woman betrayed the trick, and the suitors forced Penelope to finish. Telemachus refuses to expel the mother who bore him, and rejects the claim that her resistance gives these men a right to consume his home. Zeus then sends 2 eagles that circle above the assembly and turn upon each other before flying away. Halitherses reads the sign. Odysseus is near, and punishment is approaching those who occupy his house. Eurymachus ridicules the prophecy and threatens the seer. The omen does not remove the suitors' freedom. It gives them a clear chance to withdraw, and they knowingly refuse it. The real mentor, whom Odysseus left in charge of his affairs, rebukes the Ithacans for watching a small group violate the household of their former king. Leocritus replies that even Odysseus could not defeat so many men, and abruptly dismisses the gathering. The community offers neither a ship nor protection. Telemachus learns that public institutions will not defend his family, so he must depend on divine aid and the few people who remain loyal. On a deserted stretch of shore, Telemachus washes his hands and prays to the visitor who advised him. Athena appears in Mentor's shape, promises to travel beside him, and undertakes to find both ship and crew. She sends him back to the palace to gather provisions without betraying the plan. The failed assembly now gives way to a private journey made possible by a trusted alliance. At the palace, Antinous pretends to restore friendship and invites Telemachus to eat as before. Telemachus refuses to resume the role of a dependent child and says he will find a way to sail whether the suitors lend him a ship or not. They laugh, imagining that he might seek allies, bring poison home, be sold abroad, or vanish like his father. Their jokes, however, reveal that they have begun to imagine his death. In the locked storeroom, Telemachus asks Eurycleia to fill jars with wine and prepare meal for the voyage. He makes her swear not to tell Penelope for 12 days, unless his mother discovers the absence sooner. The old nurse grieves and warns that the suitors may kill him, yet she respects the young man's decision and keeps her oath. Food and secrecy together make the departure possible. Athena, still appearing as Mentor, borrows a ship from Nomen, recruits young Ithacan oarsmen, and casts drowsiness over the suitors' feast. After sunset, she leads Telemachus to the harbor, where the crew stows wine and grain and takes its places. What had been only advice at the beginning of the day has become an expedition the suitors cannot stop. Their intended victim leaves while they sleep. The mooring lines are released, the mast raised, and the sail filled by the fair wind Athena sends. The men pour a libation, honoring the goddess who has opened the way, and the ship travels through the night. Telemachus has crossed the boundary of the house that confined him. At dawn, he will reach Pylos, where he must speak for himself before Nestor and an entire foreign community. Book 3. The ship reaches Pylos at sunrise during a vast sacrifice to Poseidon. 9 companies of 500 people, with 9 bulls offered by each company. Phaeacians, Nestor's son, welcomes the strangers into the rite before asking who they are and hands the cup first to the older visitor, Athena in mentor's form. Athena urges the hesitant Telemachus to pray, then passes him the cup. Pylian hospitality begins with food, worship, and inclusion rather than interrogation. Only after the meal does Nestor ask their names and purpose. Telemachus identifies himself without requiring Athena to speak for him, explains the suitors' destruction of his estate, and asks for the truth about Odysseus even if the news is painful. Nestor remembers Odysseus as an unmatched strategist at Troy, but admits that he does not know where his friend went. He can offer no simple answer, only the history of how the returning army broke apart. After Troy fell, a dispute divided Agamemnon and Menelaus. Agamemnon wished to remain and appease Athena, while Menelaus wanted to sail immediately. Odysseus first departed with Menelaus, then turned back at Tenedos to rejoin Agamemnon. Nestor and Diomedes continued home, while storms scattered others. The missing information is therefore a consequence of divided leadership and separate decisions, not one mysterious disappearance shared by the whole army. Nestor asks whether the suitors dominate because the people support them, or because Telemachus has been forced to submit. He hopes Athena will favor the son as openly as she favored Odysseus, and he invokes Orestes, whose return and punishment of Aegisthus won lasting fame. Telemachus wishes for such power but doubts that the gods have granted it to him. His search for news is becoming an education in what an heir may be required to do. When Telemachus asks why Menelaus did not save his brother, Nestor recounts the disaster at Mycenae. Storms kept Menelaus abroad while Aegisthus seduced Clytemnestra, removed the loyal bard Agamemnon had appointed to guard her, and killed the returning king. Aegisthus ruled for 7 years before Orestes came home in the 8th and punished him. Another absent ruler's house warns Telemachus not to remain away too long, and Menelaus becomes the next source he must consult. Nestor invites both visitors to sleep in his palace, but Athena says that she must return to the ship while Telemachus travels overland with one of Nestor's sons. She then takes the form of a sea eagle and flies away before them. Nestor recognizes that the young guest is personally protected by Athena and promises the goddess a heifer whose horns will be covered in gold. Telemachus is welcomed into the palace as an honored guest. The following morning, a goldsmith plates the heifer's horns, Nestor prays, and the family completes the sacrifice. Polycaste, Nestor's daughter, bathes Telemachus, anoints him, and clothes him so that he emerges with the radiance of a young god. The ceremony, fresh clothes, meal, horses, and provisions complete a full pattern of receiving and sending a guest. His outward transformation reflects the confidence that has grown since Ithaca. Nestor appoints Pisistratus to drive Telemachus to Sparta. The young men cross the plain, spend the night with Diocles at ferry, and resume their journey the next day. Telemachus now travels with a companion of his own generation, not only with gods and men old enough to be his father. By evening, they reach Lacedaemon and find Menelaus's palace bright with wedding celebrations. Book 4. Menelaus is celebrating 2 marriages, sending his daughter Hermione to her husband and arranging a bride for his son Megapens. When Eteoneus asks whether the unknown traveler should be admitted or sent elsewhere, Menelaus rebukes him. They themselves survive their long return through the hospitality of strangers. He orders the horses tended, the guests bathed, and food served before any question is asked. Telemachus enters another household where hospitality is treated as an obligation rather than a bargain. Overwhelmed by bronze, gold, silver, and ivory, Telemachus whispers that the palace resembles Olympus. Menelaus explains that the wealth cost him 8 years of wandering and cannot compensate for the brother and comrades he lost, especially Odysseus. Hearing his father's name, Telemachus hides his tears beneath his cloak. Menelaus suspects who the young man is, but waits rather than forcing the recognition. Helen enters, studies the visitor's hands, feet, eyes, and head, and declares that he looks astonishingly like Odysseus. Phaeacians confirms the name and identifies himself as Nestor's son. The household weeps for the missing Odysseus, murdered Agamemnon, and fallen Telemachus, Phaeacians' brother. The young Pylian honors the dead, yet asks that grief be given limits, so remembrance does not consume the entire night. Helen mixes nepenthe into the wine to soften sorrow, then recalls how Odysseus injured his own body, dressed in rags, and entered Troy in disguise. She recognized and questioned him, but kept his secret while he gathered intelligence. Menelaus adds a more troubling memory. Helen circled the wooden horse imitating the voices of the warriors' wives, and Odysseus restrained the men who nearly answered. The paired stories display his disguise and self-command, while leaving Helen's loyalties deliberately unsettled. The next morning, Telemachus directly asks whether his father lives and describes the suitors consuming his inheritance. Menelaus condemns them as helpless fawns sleeping in a lion's den, certain of safety until the lion returns. He predicts that Odysseus will make them answer for their conduct. More importantly, he begins the account of how, while stranded at Pharos near Egypt, he obtained actual knowledge of the missing king. Ithaca, daughter of the sea god Proteus, pitied Menelaus and taught him how to compel an answer. He and 3 chosen men hid beneath sealskins, using a powerful salve to endure the smell, then seized Proteus when he came to count his herd. The old god changed into a lion, snake, leopard, boar, flowing water, and tall tree, but they held fast through every form. When he became an old man again, he had to reveal why they were trapped and how they could leave. Proteus said Menelaus had neglected the proper sacrifices and must return to Egypt to appease the gods before sailing home. He also told of different post-war fates. Ajax, son of Oileus, survived one danger only to boast against the gods and be destroyed by Poseidon, while Agamemnon reached home and fell into Aegisthus' trap. Victory at Troy did not guarantee a successful homecoming. Each leader's choices, circumstances, and relationships produced a different end. Asked about the last living man detained at sea, Proteus named Odysseus, son of Laertes. He had seen him weeping on Calypso's island, without a ship, oars, or crew to carry him away. Telemachus finally receives the minimum certainty he crossed the sea to find. His father is alive, though imprisoned and still unable to return. The answer relieves one uncertainty without solving the danger at home. Proteus also foretold that Menelaus would go to Elysium because he was Helen's husband and therefore Zeus's son-in-law, an exceptional fate based on divine kinship rather than martial merit. Menelaus returned to Egypt, made the required sacrifices, and raised a memorial to Agamemnon before sailing safely home. Now he offers Telemachus horses, but the young man politely explains that rocky Ithaca has no suitable plains. He accepts a silver mixing bowl with a golden rim, while Helen gives a robe she wove for his future bride. Back on Ithaca, Noman casually asks Antinous when Telemachus will return his borrowed ship. The suitors are stunned that the boy they mocked has organized an able crew beneath their notice. Antinous immediately selects 20 men and plans an ambush in the strait on the homeward route. Ridicule has become a specific conspiracy to kill the heir before he can use what he has learned. Medon overhears the plan and warns Penelope both that her son has gone and that men are waiting to murder him. She blames the servants for concealing the journey and considers sending Dolios to inform Laertes, until Eurycleia confesses that she prepared the provisions under oath. The nurse urges her not to deepen the old man's sorrow, but to bathe, change her clothes, and pray to Athena. Penelope obeys and collapses under the fear of losing her only son, as well as her husband. Athena sends a dream image resembling Penelope's sister Iphthime. The apparition promises that Telemachus is under Athena's protection, yet refuses to answer when Penelope asks whether Odysseus lives. The comfort is real but limited. Divine reassurance does not erase the need to act or the danger already at sea. At Asteris, a small island with 2 harbors between Ithaca and Cyclops, Antinous and his men take up their watch. Book 5. The gods meet again at dawn. Athena reminds Zeus that Odysseus once ruled his people with a father's care, yet is forgotten, while Telemachus now sails toward the suitors' ambush. Zeus tells her to protect the son and sends Hermes with a final order that Calypso release the father. The plan agreed in the first council is at last assigned to those who must carry it out. Hermes reaches Odyssey, a beautiful island of fragrant woods, streams, vines, and Calypso's cave. Odysseus is absent from the cave, weeping as usual beside the sea after 7 years of confinement. Calypso angrily points out the gods' double standard. Male gods openly take mortal lovers, while goddesses are condemned for doing the same. Still, she cannot oppose Zeus, and must let Odysseus build his own means of escape, rather than carry him home by divine power. Calypso finds him staring across the water and announces that he may leave. He does not trust the sudden reversal and demands an oath that she is not sending him into a fatal trap. At supper, she offers immortality and lasting youth, reminding him that mortal Penelope cannot rival a goddess in beauty. Odysseus agrees about beauty, but chooses his finite wife, his home, and the dangerous possibility of return over timeless comfort without his own identity. The next morning, Calypso provides an axe and adds and directions to suitable timber. Odysseus fells 20 trees, trims and drills them, fastens the timbers together, builds a deck and raised sides, then makes a mast, steering oar and sail. 4 days of skilled labor turn the captive who could only watch the sea into a shipwright and navigator again. On the 5th day, Calypso bathes and clothes him, loads food, water, and wine, and sends a favorable wind. For 17 days, Odysseus steers by the stars, keeping the Great Bear in its appointed position, and on the 18th he sees Scheria. Poseidon returns from Ethiopia, recognizes his enemy, masses the clouds and winds, and breaks apart the raft. Odysseus briefly wishes he had fallen at Troy, where comrades could have honored him, rather than disappear without a name at sea. Yet he clings to the wreckage and continues to choose survival. The sea goddess Ino, also called Leucothea, gives him a protective veil and tells him to abandon the raft, remove his heavy clothes, swim, and return the veil after reaching land. Odysseus suspects another divine deception and stays with the timber while it remains viable. Only when a final wave destroys it does the evidence change his decision. He wraps the veil around himself and enters the water, while Athena restrains the other winds and lets the north wind bear him onward for 2 nights and days. On the 3rd day, Odysseus reaches a coast of cliffs and pounding surf. He first grips a rock, is torn away, and then follows Athena's prompting to swim along the shore rather than challenge the stone wall directly. Finding a river mouth, he appeals to the river god as a suppliant, and the current grows calm enough for him to land. Judgment and a correctly directed plea succeed where force could not. Odysseus kisses the earth and returns Ino's veil, but cold and exhaustion still threaten him. He weighs sleeping beside the river against entering a wood where wild animals might roam, then crawls beneath 2 intertwined olive bushes. He gathers leaves over himself like a farmer preserving a coal beneath ashes, and Athena grants him sleep. Stripped of ship, companions, clothes, and name, he survives to meet the people of Scheria. Book 6. Athena enters the sleeping Nausicaa's dream in the shape of a friend, and teases her about leaving clothes unwashed when marriage may be near. On waking, the princess asks Alcinous for a mule cart, modestly explaining that her father and brothers need clean garments for public occasions. He understands the unspoken concern without embarrassing her and gives permission. Ares supplies food, wine, and olive oil for Nausicaa and her attendants. At the river, the young women wash and spread the clothes, bathe, eat, and begin a ball game. Athena makes the ball fall into deep water, and their cries wake Odysseus in the thicket. He covers himself with a leafy branch and considers whether to clasp Nausicaa's knees or speak from a distance. Knowing that physical supplication may frighten her, he chooses respectful words and space. The attendants flee from his salt-crusted appearance, but Athena steadies Nausicaa. Odysseus compares her to Artemis and recalls a young palm he once admired beside Apollo's shrine on Delos, using memory to express wonder without approaching her. He asks for clothing and directions rather than claiming protection as a right. Nausicaa sees past the frightening surface and calls her companions back, reminding them that strangers and beggars stand under Zeus's care. The women leave clothes, oil, and food, then move aside when Odysseus asks to wash in privacy. After he cleans away the salt and dresses, Athena makes him taller and more radiant, and Nausicaa privately imagines such a man as a possible husband. The apparent wild man has become a guest whom society can receive. Nausicaa feeds him, then turns from rescue to the delicate problem of entering the city. She explains that malicious talk would arise if an unknown man walked beside an unmarried princess. Her solution protects them both. Odysseus will follow the cart through the countryside, wait in Athena's grove outside the city, and enter only after she has reached home. Her caution is not indifference, but an understanding that hospitality must work within social reputation. Odysseus accepts the boundary. Nausicaa tells him to pass Alcinous and appeal first to Queen Arete, whose judgment carries extraordinary weight in the household. If Arete receives him favorably, his chance of seeing Ithaca will be strong. The cart leaves the river with Odysseus following at the agreed distance, and he stops in the sacred grove while the princess goes ahead. There he prays that Athena will make the Phaeacians receive him with compassion. Book 7. Nausicaa reaches the palace, where her brothers unharness the mules and carry in the washing. Odysseus enters the city after her, concealed by a mist Athena casts so that the seafaring Phaeacians will not question or insult him. The goddess approaches in the shape of a young girl carrying a pitcher and guides him past harbor, ships, and assembly place. Divine concealment protects him, but he must still learn whom to approach and what to say. As they walk, Athena explains that Alcinous and Arete belong to the same royal line descended from Poseidon. Arete is honored by husband, children, and people with unusual respect, and her good judgment can settle disputes even among men. Athena therefore repeats Nausicaa's crucial advice. Odysseus must appeal to the queen before the king. His immediate goal changes from asking a ruler for transport to winning the confidence of the woman who anchors the court. At the palace, Odysseus pauses before bronze walls, golden doors, and silver doorposts guarded by immortal gold and silver dogs made by Hephaestus. Inside, golden figures hold torches while servants weave. Outside, pears, pomegranates, apples, figs, olives, grapes, and vegetables flourish in every season beside two flowing springs. This is not wealth without function, but a community of craft, agriculture, and maritime skill. Odysseus recognizes a society with the resources to send him home. Still hidden in mist, he crosses the crowded hall and clasps Arete's knees. The mist clears as he asks queen, king, and assembled nobles to pity a man separated too long from home, then sits in the ashes by the hearth. No one speaks until the elder Echenius reminds Alcinous that leaving a suppliant on the ground violates hospitality. The king lifts Odysseus up, gives him the seat of his son Laodamas, and orders food and wine. Alcinous announces that he will convene the Phaeacian elders at dawn, offer sacrifice, hold a feast, and provide a ship no matter how distant the stranger's country may be. He wonders whether their visitor might be a god, but Odysseus insists that he is mortal and acquainted with suffering. Even at his most grief-stricken, he says, hunger forces him to eat in order to live. His name remains hidden, yet the host's duty is already accepted. After the other nobles leave, Arete notices that Odysseus wears clothing woven in her own household and asks how he obtained it. He gives the necessary route from Ogygia through Calypso's release, Poseidon's storm, the river landing, and his meeting with Nausicaa, without yet naming himself. He deliberately says that the princess acted wisely and that he chose to enter separately, protecting her reputation. The account verifies his honesty. While preserving the secret, he is not ready to surrender. Alcinous says he would gladly welcome a man of such judgment as Nausicaa's husband, but makes clear that Odysseus will not be compelled to remain. Phaeacian ships can carry him even farther than ordinary vessels could travel, and the promised departure will proceed the next day. Odysseus prays that Zeus will let the king fulfill his word. Offered another possible household, as on Ogygia, he again chooses the uncertain road to his own. Book 8. At dawn, Athena moves through Scheria as a herald, calling the people to assembly and making Odysseus appear taller and more impressive. Alcinous publicly explains the stranger's request, selects 52 sailors, and orders the ship launched and equipped before everyone returns to the palace for a farewell feast. What began as one family's promise is now a communal decision. The Phaeacians commit their labor, vessel, and reputation to the unknown guest's return. The blind singer Demodocus performs a story about a quarrel between Odysseus and Achilles at Troy. The audience receives it as entertainment, but Odysseus covers his head and weeps, uncovering his face only when the singing pauses. Alcinous alone observes the repeated grief. Rather than expose his guest, the king ends the feast for the moment and moves everyone outside to athletic contests. After races, wrestling, jumping, and discus throwing, Laodamas politely invites Odysseus to compete. The exhausted traveler declines because his mind is fixed on home, but Euryalus insults him as a merchant concerned only with cargo, not an athlete. Odysseus takes a discus larger than those already used and throws it far beyond every mark. Athena, disguised among the spectators, measures the distance and publicly confirms the victory, turning his claim into witnessed fact. Odysseus challenges the Phaeacians to boxing, wrestling, archery, or spear throwing, exempting only Laodamas because a guest should not provoke his host. Alcinous recognizes that the insult has damaged hospitality and redirects the gathering toward the arts in which his people take pride: seamanship, running, music, and dance. Demodocus sings how Hephaestus used an invisible net to expose the adultery of Ares and Aphrodite, while Poseidon guaranteed payment for Ares' release. The comic tale and the prince's dance with a purple ball replace hostility with shared pleasure. Odysseus sincerely praises the Phaeacian dancers, and Alcinous arranges a material repair for the earlier offense. 12 princes, along with the king, provide clothing and gold. Euryalus apologizes and gives Odysseus a bronze sword with a silver hilt. Odysseus accepts both words and weapon, wishing the young man happiness rather than preserving the grievance. Ares packs the gifts into a chest, and Odysseus secures it with a private knot so that his restored possessions will survive the voyage. Bathed and dressed for the final meal, Odysseus meets Nausicaa standing beside a pillar. She asks him to remember that she gave him the chance to live. He promises that, if he reaches home, he will honor her in gratitude like a goddess. A relationship that might have become courtship closes instead as a debt freely acknowledged, leaving neither a claim upon the other. At supper, Odysseus sends Demodocus a choice portion of meat and asks him to sing about the wooden horse. The bard tells how the Greeks feigned departure, how the Trojans debated whether to pierce, destroy, or preserve the horse, and how the hidden warriors emerged after it was brought within the city. Hearing his own stratagem turned into song, Odysseus does not celebrate. He weeps like a woman embracing her fallen husband, while conquerors prepare to carry her away, joining the victorious warriors' pain to that of war's victims. Alcinous stops the song for a second time and now refuses to let anonymity continue. He asks what name the stranger's parents and countrymen use, what land their self-guiding Phaeacian ship must find, and why the story of Troy wounds him so deeply. He also recalls the prophecy that Poseidon may someday petrify a returning Phaeacian ship because their people carry strangers safely home. Odysseus sits among those who can restore him to Ithaca, compelled to exchange his hidden name and his story for their final trust. Book 9. At the Phaeacian court, Odysseus finally gives his name and begins the story of the voyage that has kept him from Ithaca. His first landfall after Troy was Ismarus, city of the Cicones, where his men took goods and captives. He ordered them to leave at once, but they ignored him, feasted on the shore, and gave the defeated people time to summon stronger allies from inland. The counterattack came at dawn and lasted until sunset. Odysseus kept his ships fighting until escape became possible, but the delay carried a precise cost. 6 men from every ship were lost. Before sailing on, the survivors called each missing companion by name 3 times, honoring those who would never answer. A storm then drove the fleet away from its homeward course. After 9 days, the ships reached the land of the Lotus-Eaters, and Odysseus sent 3 men to learn who lived there. The inhabitants offered no violence, only lotus fruit, yet anyone who tasted it forgot the wish to return. Odysseus dragged the affected men back, bound them beneath the benches, and ordered the fleet away before desire dissolved the journey itself. Next came a fertile island opposite the country of the Cyclops. Wild goats flourished there, though no one farmed the land or used its excellent harbor, and the crew hunted enough to feast. Curious about the smoke and voices across the water, Odysseus chose one ship, took 12 trusted men, and carried a skin of powerful wine given to him by Marin, a priest he had spared at Ismarus. They entered the cave of Polyphemus and found cheeses, lambs, and young goats arranged with care. The crew urged Odysseus to take food and animals and escape, but he stayed to meet the owner and seek a guest gift. That decision trapped them when the Cyclops returned, sealed the doorway with a stone the men could not move, and treated the laws of hospitality with contempt rather than reverence. Polyphemus asked where their ship lay, but Odysseus suspected a trap and invented a tactical lie. He said Poseidon had wrecked it on the rocks. The Cyclops then seized 2 men for his meal and slept inside the sealed cave. Odysseus first considered striking him, then recognized that no one present could roll away the entrance stone, so immediate revenge would also imprison every survivor. At dawn, Polyphemus seized 2 more men for breakfast before driving his flock outside. While he tended the animals, the captives sharpened an olive stake and hid it, and Odysseus selected 4 helpers by lot and made himself the 5th. When the Cyclops returned that evening, he seized 2 more men, making 6 companions across 3 meals in all, before Odysseus served him Marin's wine in repeated cups. The delighted giant then asked his guest's name while promising a gift. Odysseus answered with another strategic lie. His name was Nobody. Once the wine overcame Polyphemus, the 5 men heated the stake and blinded him, and his cries brought neighboring Cyclops to the cave. Asked who was hurting him, he shouted that nobody was doing it, so they concluded that his suffering came from the gods and left him unaided. Polyphemus still guarded the doorway by touch as he released his animals. Odysseus tied each of the 6 surviving men beneath the middle animal in a group of 3 rams and clung under the belly of the largest ram himself. The Cyclops felt each animal's back but not its underside, so all 6 men escaped with Odysseus to the ship and took the flock. Once the ship was underway, Odysseus called back in triumph. His crew begged him to stop, because the Cyclops was hurling rocks toward the sound and nearly drove the vessel ashore again. Pride defeated caution. Odysseus ignored them, revealed his true name, and told Polyphemus exactly whose deed this was. That disclosure completed an old prophecy. Polyphemus recalled that the seer Telemachus had foretold his blinding by Odysseus, though he had expected a giant rather than a man using wine and cunning. He prayed to his father Poseidon that Odysseus should never reach home, or should arrive late, alone in misery, on another man's ship, and find trouble waiting in his house. Back on the Goat Island, Odysseus divided the captured animals and sacrificed the great ram to Zeus. The god did not accept the offering as a change of course. The ruin of the remaining ships was already gathering. After mourning the companions lost in the cave, the fleet sailed on with relief, but the prayer to Poseidon now followed it. Book 10. Odysseus next reached the floating island of Iolus, keeper of the winds. Iolus welcomed the company for a full month, listened to the story of Troy and the return voyage, and finally gave Odysseus a leather bag containing every hostile wind while leaving the west wind free to carry the ships toward Ithaca. Odysseus guarded the bag and steered for 9 days without sleep. On the 10th day, the fires of Ithaca were visible. Exhaustion finally made Odysseus sleep, and his companions decided that the secret bag must contain gold and silver unfairly kept from them. Their envy led them to open it just before home, releasing the winds in a single blast that swept the fleet all the way back to Iolus. Odysseus returned alone to the palace and asked for help a second time. When Iolus learned what had happened, he refused, judging that a man so openly pursued by divine anger could not be assisted safely. The company rode away under its own strength, and the hope created by seeing Ithaca made the renewed exile more bitter. After 6 days, they entered the narrow harbor of the Laestrygonians, surrounded by cliffs with only one confined passage. Every captain moored inside except Odysseus, who kept his own ship outside the entrance and tied it to a rock. That small precaution became the line between survival and destruction. 3 scouts met a young woman who directed them to the palace of her father, King Antiphates. There they encountered a gigantic people who treated strangers as prey. 1 scout was seized, and the other 2 fled. The Laestrygonians crowded the cliffs, threw heavy stones onto the trapped ships, and destroyed the fleet inside the harbor, while Odysseus cut his cable and escaped with the only vessel left. The survivors reached Aea, island of Circe, and grief kept them on the shore for 2 days. On the 3rd, Odysseus climbed to survey the land, saw smoke rising through the woods, and brought down a great stag so his exhausted people could eat. The next morning, he divided the company into 2 groups by lot, placing Eurylochus over 22 men while keeping the same number with himself. Eurylochus led his party to Circe's house, where tame-looking wolves and lions surrounded the visitors without attacking. Circe invited the men inside, mixed a drug into their food, and changed them into swine while leaving their human minds intact. Eurylochus alone had remained outside from suspicion, and he returned in terror to report what he had seen. Odysseus set out to rescue them despite Eurylochus's plea that they flee. Hermes met him on the way, gave him the protective herb moly, and explained the exact sequence required. Resist Circe's drug, confront her when she raises her wand, and force her to swear a binding oath that she will attempt no further harm. Odysseus followed these instructions and made the oath a condition before accepting her hospitality. He would not eat in comfort while his companions remained imprisoned. Circe restored them first, and their reunion brought open relief. Then she invited the whole crew from the beach. Eurylochus objected, reminding them that Odysseus's curiosity at the Cyclops cave had already cost lives, and Odysseus nearly drew his sword against him before the others calmed the quarrel. Circe's island became so comfortable that the company remained for a year. At last, the men reminded Odysseus that home was still the purpose of the voyage. Circe agreed to let them go, but told him that no direct course was yet possible. He must first travel to the realm of the dead and consult the prophet Tiresias. The new command broke the crew's brief confidence. Circe explained the route and ritual, while another loss occurred before departure. Elpenor, the youngest and least disciplined of the company, had slept on the roof after drinking heavily. Waking in confusion, he forgot the ladder, fell from the roof, and died, a companion lost not to an enemy but to carelessness. Book 11. Following Circe's directions, Odysseus sailed to the far boundary of ocean and entered the dim country of the Cimmerians. There he dug a trench, poured offerings for the dead in the required order, promised future sacrifices in Ithaca, and let the blood of black sheep flow into the pit. Sword in hand, he kept every spirit away until Tiresias should speak first. The first familiar shade was Elpenor, whose body still lay unburied on Circe's island. He begged Odysseus not to abandon him without funeral rites, but to burn his body in armor, raise a mound by the sea, and plant his oar upon it as a sign of the life he had lived. Odysseus promised to do all of this when he returned. He then saw his mother, Anticlea, and learned with shock that she had died during his absence. Even so, he obeyed the ritual order and did not let her approach the blood before Tiresias. This restraint matters because longing is present, but the knowledge required for survival must come first. After drinking, Tiresias explained that Poseidon's anger arose from the blinding of his son. Home was still possible if Odysseus and his men controlled themselves and left the cattle of the sun untouched on Thrinacia. If they harmed the herd, the ship and crew would be destroyed, and Odysseus might reach Ithaca only late alone, aboard another people's vessel, to find men consuming his property and courting his wife. The prophecy continued beyond arrival. Odysseus would punish the suitors, then carry an oar inland until he met people who knew nothing of the sea and mistook it for a winnowing fan. There he must sacrifice to Poseidon, return home, honor all the gods, and eventually meet a gentle death in old age, with his people prosperous around him. Only after Tiresias withdrew did Anticlea drink and recognize her son. She told him that Penelope remained faithful in sorrow. Telemachus still managed the estate as well as he could, and Laertes lived in hardship outside the city. Her own death had not come from illness or violence, she said, but from grief and longing for Odysseus. Odysseus tried 3 times to embrace his mother, and 3 times her form passed through his arms. She explained that the dead no longer possess flesh and bone. Once the body is consumed, the spirit moves like a dream. The failed embraces make the visit's limit unmistakable. Information can cross this boundary, but touch and restoration cannot. Anticlea was followed by a long procession of renowned women, each telling her lineage and fate. Odysseus later pauses this account in the Phaeacian hall, and Queen Arid and the elders praise him and press him to continue. King Alcinous promises that the gifts and voyage home will not be withdrawn, so the storyteller resumes with the warriors he met. Agamemnon described his return from Troy and his death through betrayal in his own house. His bitterness led him to distrust women broadly, yet he distinguished Penelope from the example that wounded him and advised Odysseus to return secretly rather than openly. The warning reinforces a plan Odysseus has already begun to learn. Homecoming requires reconnaissance before recognition. Achilles asked about his son and father, and Odysseus comforted him with news of Neoptolemus's courage at Troy. Yet Achilles rejected any grand claim that glory makes death desirable, saying in substance that the poorest life is preferable to kingship among the dead. Ajax alone refused reconciliation, still angry over the contest for Achilles' armor, and withdrew without speaking. Odysseus also saw judges, hunters, and figures enduring famous punishments, including Tantalus reaching for food and water that always escaped him, and Sisyphus pushing his stone uphill, only to see it roll back. The shade of Heracles spoke with him, while the immortal Heracles lived among the gods. At last, fearing that Persephone might send the Gorgon's head among the dead, Odysseus returned to the ship and left the shore. Book 12. The ship first returned to Aea, where the crew recovered Elpenor's body. They burned and buried him with his armor, built the promised mound, and set his oar on top. Circe then came with food and drink, allowed the exhausted men to rest, and took Odysseus aside to explain every danger on the route ahead. The Sirens would sing with irresistible knowledge, she warned, leaving bones around their shore. Odysseus could hear them only if his companions sealed their own ears with wax and tied him upright to the mast, with orders to tighten the ropes if he begged for release. Beyond them, Circe described 2 routes and directed him toward the passage between Scylla and Charybdis. Charybdis swallowed and expelled the sea in a deadly cycle, while 6-headed Scylla seized one man with each head from passing vessels. Circe made the choice brutally clear. Losing 6 men once was better than bringing the entire crew back toward the whirlpool. She told him not to fight Scylla, but to move fast and call upon the creature's mother, Crates, for protection against a second attack. The final warning concerned Thrinacia, where the sun's sacred cattle and sheep grazed under the care of his daughters, Lampetia and Phaeacians. If the herd remained untouched, the company could still reach home. If not, ruin would follow. Odysseus repeated the warnings about the Sirens and the cattle to his crew, but he concealed the certain loss at Scylla, because terror might make them stop rowing at the worst possible moment. As the Sirens' island approached, the wind fell. Odysseus softened wax, pressed it into every companion's ears, and let them bind him to the mast. Their song promised complete knowledge of Troy and the world, and he struggled to be freed, but the rowers obeyed his earlier command and bound him more tightly until the danger passed. Smoke, spray, and the roar of Charybdis then broke the crew's nerve, and Odysseus urged them to row by reminding them of earlier escapes. Although Circe had expressly told him not to arm himself, he put on armor and took 2 spears, hoping to defend his men. His courage could not alter the terms of the passage. While every eye turned toward the whirlpool, Scylla carried away the 6 strongest companions, whose final cries followed the ship. Near Thrinacia, Odysseus wanted to pass without landing. Eurylochus objected that exhausted rowers could not work through the night and argued for a brief rest, provided everyone swore to leave the sacred herd alone. The whole crew supported him, so Odysseus accepted the landing only after binding them by oath. For a month, adverse winds prevented departure. Circe's provisions eventually ran out, and the men survived by fishing and hunting while Odysseus prayed apart from them. During one such absence, the gods sent sleep over him, and Eurylochus presented a fatal line of reasoning. Starvation was the worst death, so they should sacrifice the finest cattle, promise the sun a rich temple if they returned, and accept divine risk rather than waste away. The men killed the chosen animals. Because they lacked barley and wine, they used oak leaves and water for the rites, substitutions that could not make the act lawful. Lampetia reported the offense to the sun, and he demanded justice from Zeus, threatening otherwise to take his light down among the dead. When Odysseus returned, he could only rebuke what was already done. The hides crawled and the meat seemed to low on the spits, yet the starving crew ate for 6 days. On the 7th, the wind changed and they launched, but Zeus raised a storm and struck the ship after it had cleared the island. The mast fell and killed the pilot. The hull broke apart, and every companion was lost. Odysseus alone tied the mast and keel together as a crude raft, then drifted back towards Scylla and Charybdis. He escaped the whirlpool by clinging to a fig tree until his timbers rose again, and after 9 days the sea carried him to Odyssey, where Calypso received him and kept him from his journey home. Book 13. Odysseus finishes his tale, and the Phaeacians load their gifts onto the ship promised to him. He falls into a deep sleep as the skilled crew crosses the sea, and they carry him ashore without waking him, place the treasure nearby, and depart. After 20 years, he lies on Ithacan ground before he knows that he has arrived. Poseidon complains to Zeus that mortals no longer respect him, because the Phaeacians have brought Odysseus home despite an old warning that one of their returning ships would be punished. He asks to crush their ship and cover their city with a mountain, and Zeus instructs him to turn the ship to stone in sight of the people, then build a high mountain around the city. Poseidon performs only the first act in the source story. Seeing the stone ship, Alcinous recognizes the inherited prophecy, stops all future escorts, and orders 12 bulls sacrificed in hope that the second act may be withheld. The episode ends with the Phaeacians praying, not with confirmation that their city was spared. Athena has wrapped Ithaca in mist, so Odysseus does not recognize it and fears that the sailors have deceived him. Disguised as a young shepherd, she asks who he is. He immediately invents a tactical fiction about being a Cretan fugitive who killed a king's son and escaped aboard a foreign ship. This is a deliberate cover story, not his true past. Athena smiles at his refusal to surrender caution even at home, reveals herself, and clears the mist. Odysseus recognizes the harbor, the wooded hill, and the cave of the nymphs, then kisses the earth. He also tests Athena's news about the suitors against what he learned from Agamemnon, and she praises his habit of checking danger instead of walking blindly into it. Together they hide the Phaeacian bronze, gold, and clothing deep inside the cave, and close the entrance with a stone. Athena explains that the suitors have occupied his house for 3 years, while Penelope delays them and Telemachus has gone to Pylos and Sparta seeking news. She says she allowed the young man to travel so that he could gain a name of his own, but now an ambush waits for him. Their strategy begins with concealment rather than a direct march on the palace. Athena changes Odysseus into an aged beggar, dimming his eyes, weathering his skin, thinning his hair, and dressing him in rags so that no one will recognize him. She sends him to Eumaeus, the loyal swineherd, with instructions to learn what has happened at home, while she goes to Sparta to bring Telemachus back by a safer route. Book 14. Odysseus finds Eumaeus at a carefully built farm where 12 pens hold the household swine, though the suitors' daily demands have steadily reduced the boars. 4 trained dogs rush at the stranger, and Odysseus avoids provoking them by sitting down and dropping his staff. Eumaeus drives them away, brings the unknown beggar inside, and explains that respect is owed even to a poor stranger, because strangers and beggars stand under divine protection. For the first meal, Eumaeus selects exactly 2 young piglets. He cuts and roasts the meat on spits, sprinkles it with barley meal, mixes wine, and shares what he has while lamenting that the fattest animals go to the suitors. This simple hospitality contrasts with their waste, and it must not be confused with the more formal evening sacrifice that comes later. The swineherd speaks of Odysseus with affection deeper than ordinary service, remembering that his master would have rewarded years of work with a house, land, and a wife. Yet he refuses to believe another traveler's promise of return, because false messengers repeatedly reach Penelope, accept her hospitality, and exploit her grief. Odysseus swears that the master will come before the month's end and asks no clothing or other reward until the prediction proves true. Eumaeus still distrusts the claim, but his skepticism never becomes an excuse to mistreat his guest. Asked for his identity, Odysseus tells a long Cretan biography involving a wealthy father, war at Troy, a disastrous expedition to Egypt, years abroad, a deceitful Phaeacian, and eventual escape on Ithaca. This entire biography is strategic fiction, designed to explain his appearance, test Eumaeus, and place a report of Odysseus close enough to sound possible. Eumaeus recognizes that parts of it may be crafted, especially the promised homecoming, and answers with compassion rather than credulity. At evening, the herdsmen return and Eumaeus chooses a 5-year-old boar, not the 2 piglets served earlier. He cuts hair from the animal's head and casts it into the fire with a prayer. Then the men prepare the meat, and Eumaeus divides it into 7 portions, giving Odysseus the honored share. The ritual details establish this as a separate meal, and show that the servant maintains order even while the household above him abandons it. A cold, wet night gives Odysseus another chance to test his host without directly begging. He tells a compact story from Troy in which he lacked a cloak during an exposed night watch, and the Odysseus inside that story cleverly caused another soldier to leave his cloak behind. This story, too, is a tactical fiction, a courteous signal of need rather than a factual memory offered for biography. Eumaeus understands. He makes a bed of skins by the fire and covers the stranger with his own spare winter cloak, then arms himself and goes outside to sleep near the animals. Watching him protect the estate in bad weather, Odysseus sees practical proof that loyalty has survived his absence. Book 15. Athena goes to Sparta and finds Telemachus awake with thoughts of his father. She tells him to return at once, warning that the suitors are consuming his estate and that his mother's relatives are pressing her toward marriage with Eurymachus. More urgently, an armed party is waiting in the strait between Ithaca and Samos, so he must sail at night beyond the islands, land first near Eumaeus's farm, and send the swineherd to tell Penelope privately that he is safe. At dawn, Telemachus asks Menelaus for leave to go, explaining that he fears for both his life and the property left without protection. His host agrees that forcing a guest to remain is as improper as driving away one who wishes to stay, but he serves a final meal and sends valuable gifts, including a silver mixing bowl, a silver vessel, and an embroidered robe chosen by Helen for Telemachus's future bride. As the travelers set out, an eagle flies past carrying a tame goose from the palace yard, and Helen interprets the sign. As the eagle seized prey raised in the house, Odysseus will return and strike the men occupying his own. Telemachus and Pisistratus reach Pylos, but Telemachus asks his friend to drive directly to the ship rather than Nestor's palace. This bypass is deliberate, not discourteous. He knows the generous old king would insist on further hospitality and delay a journey now shadowed by an ambush. Pisistratus understands, delivers him to the shore, and urges him to leave before Nestor can come after him. As the crew prepares, Theoclymenus approaches as a fugitive. He is a seer from a respected prophetic family, but he has killed a man of his own clan in Argos and believes powerful relatives are pursuing him. He asks protection as a suppliant, and Telemachus accepts him aboard, combining humane hospitality with the practical decision to sail without delay. While the ship crosses the sea, Odysseus continues testing Eumaeus and suggests that he might go to the palace to beg or serve the suitors. Eumaeus strongly opposes the idea because their servants are young and polished, while an old beggar would meet abuse, and he promises that Telemachus will provide clothing and safe passage. He also explains that Laertes still lives in grief, that Anticlea died longing for her son, and that Penelope's besieged household has made free, trusting conversation between mistress and servants almost impossible. Then Eumaeus tells his own history. He was born a king's son on the prosperous island of Syria, a place divided between two cities and free of the hunger that burdens many lands, and he was raised beside Odysseus's sister. A Phoenician servant in the household secretly arranged to flee with visiting traders, stole 3 cups on the night of departure, and carried the unsuspecting child aboard as additional profit. She died on the 7th day of the voyage, and the merchants sold the grieving boy on Ithaca, where Laertes bought him, and the royal family raised him with kindness. Telemachus lands away from the city as Athena instructed and sends his crew onward. Theoclymenus asks where he should stay, and another omen appears. A hawk passes on the right with a dove in its talons. The seer declares that no family on Ithaca is more royal than Telemachus's, and that its authority will endure, after which Telemachus entrusts the guest to his reliable friend Paris, and asks Paris to keep the Spartan gifts as well. With spear in hand, Telemachus walks quickly inland to Eumaeus's farm. This quiet separation of people and objects is strategic. The ship can announce his safe return. The gifts remain beyond the suitor's reach. The fugitive guest receives protection, and Telemachus reaches the one household servant whose loyalty has not been in doubt. Book 16. At the farm, the dogs recognize Telemachus and greet him without barking. Eumaeus drops what he is holding, embraces him like a father receiving an only son from danger, and weeps with relief. Telemachus asks first about Penelope and learns that she remains in the palace, still faithful and still grieving. The disguised Odysseus rises to offer the newcomer his seat, but Telemachus politely stops him and sits on a fresh place prepared by Eumaeus. They share the previous evening's food, and Telemachus asks who the stranger is. Eumaeus repeats the Cretan identity he has been told and requests protection for the guest. Telemachus answers that his own position in the palace is too exposed to guarantee safety there, because the suitors are stronger than he is, and Penelope has not yet chosen a husband. He then sends Eumaeus to carry Penelope a private message that her son has returned safely, while specifically avoiding a public announcement that could reveal his route. Once Eumaeus is gone, Athena appears outside where only Odysseus can see her. She restores his strong body, dark beard, and good clothing, then withdraws. Telemachus recoils because the old beggar now looks divine, and even after Odysseus says, before discussing any plan, that he is the father for whom the young man has suffered, Telemachus initially believes a god is deceiving him. Odysseus explains that Athena can alter his appearance, and that the Phaeacians carried him home asleep with rich gifts now hidden in a cave. Recognition finally breaks through doubt, and father and son embrace and weep together, their cries compared to birds whose young have been taken before they could fly. Telemachus then asks the practical question of how his father reached Ithaca, and Odysseus gives the direct answer before asking anything of his son. Their reunion is emotional before it becomes tactical. Neither strategy nor revenge is allowed to erase the 20 years that made them strangers. When they regain control, Odysseus asks for the enemy's full strength. Telemachus counts 52 suitors from Dulichium with 6 attendants, 24 from Same, 20 from Zacynthus, and 12 from Ithaca, making 108 suitors in all. Also in the hall are the herald Medon, the singer Phemius, and 2 skilled serving men. So Telemachus reasonably doubts that 2 people can confront the whole group unaided. Odysseus asks whether Athena and Zeus would be sufficient allies, and Telemachus answers that no stronger support could be imagined even though the gods rule from far above. On that basis, Odysseus lays out the sequence. Telemachus will return to the palace first, while Eumaeus later leads his father there in the beggar's form. If the suitors insult, drag, throw objects at, or strike Odysseus, the son must endure it, offering only calm words, because an angry intervention would expose them before the chosen moment. Patience in the hall will therefore be an active part of the attack, not submission to the suitor's authority. At Odysseus's signal, Telemachus must remove the weapons displayed in the hall and store them upstairs. If questioned, he will give 2 plausible reasons. Smoke has damaged the arm since Odysseus left for Troy, and weapons within reach can turn a drunken argument into bloodshed and ruin a feast or wedding. He must leave behind for father and son 2 swords, 2 spears, and 2 hide shields, while Athena and Zeus confuse their opponents when action begins. The return must remain secret from everyone, including Penelope, Laertes, Eumaeus, and the household servants. Father and son will observe which women have respected the house and which have not, and they will also judge the male servant's conduct. Telemachus advises against spending too long visiting every distant farm to test each herdsman while the suitors continue consuming the estate, suggesting that this inquiry can wait until the immediate crisis is resolved. This is a plan built from disguise, controlled endurance, restricted information, and access to arms, not from confidence alone. Meanwhile, the suitors' ambush ship returns after missing Telemachus, and its arrival exposes the failure before messengers can be sent. Antinous proposes killing the young man on a country road before he can call an assembly, then dividing his possessions while leaving the house to Penelope and her eventual husband. Amphinomus refuses to act against royal blood unless the gods give approval, showing hesitation without breaking from the group. Penelope, warned by Medon, confronts Antinous and reminds him that Odysseus once protected his father, but Eurymachus falsely assures her that no one will harm Telemachus even while he privately supports the plot. Before Eumaeus reaches the farm again, Athena restores Odysseus's aged disguise so the loyal servant will not recognize him and rush to spread the news. Eumaeus reports that he delivered the message, met the ship's herald carrying the same news publicly, and saw a crowded vessel entering the harbor with shields and spears aboard, probably the failed ambush party. Telemachus does not explain what he knows. He merely exchanges a concealed smile with his father, careful that the swineherd does not see it. The 3 men then eat equal portions together while the secret remains intact, and the conspirators in the palace believe themselves unobserved. Book 17. At dawn, Telemachus leaves Eumaeus's hut to reassure Penelope and resume his place inside the palace without revealing the plan he shares with his father. He tells Eumaeus to bring the poorly dressed stranger into town once the air grows warmer, and Odysseus agrees while pretending that begging in the city is his only purpose. Father and son separate on schedule. The son enters first, while the disguised king must arrive later and endure whatever his enemies reveal about themselves. Eurycleia and the household women meet Telemachus with tears, while Penelope presses him for news of Odysseus. He describes his escape from the ambush and repeats what Menelaus learned from Proteus, but keeps his father's presence and their tactics secret. Then Theoclymenus declares from the omen he has read that Odysseus is already on Ithaca, observing and preparing revenge. The prophecy is public, yet it is not proof Penelope can safely accept, so the secret remains intact. After sunrise, Eumaeus leads the bent old beggar along the road toward town, where the goat-herd Melanthius meets them with insults. He mocks Eumaeus for feeding another burden, then kicks Odysseus, who weighs an immediate answer before forcing himself to continue in silence. That restraint preserves the larger plan and gives Melanthius time to expose his treachery more fully, including the decisive help he will later offer the suitors at the armory. Near the palace gate lies Argus, the hunting dog Odysseus trained before sailing for Troy, now neglected on a heap of refuse. At his master's scent and presence, Argus cannot rise, but he lowers his ears and moves his tail. Odysseus turns away to conceal his tears from Eumaeus. The old dog dies after seeing him once more, completing the first recognition in Ithaca without words, and showing how deeply the absent household has decayed. Inside the hall, Telemachus gives the stranger a seat, food, and wine near the threshold, publicly placing him under the heir's protection while keeping their kinship hidden. Odysseus begs from suitor to suitor and reminds Antinous that fortune can turn wealth into poverty, but Antinous answers by striking him with a footstool. Odysseus absorbs the blow and warns that justice may reach Antinous before any wedding, while Telemachus restrains his anger so the reckoning will not begin too soon. When Eumaeus reports the assault, Penelope condemns Antinous and asks to question the traveler, hoping he carries news of her husband. Odysseus sends word that they should speak after dark, when the suitors can no longer watch and provoke the conversation. He is not refusing her, but controlling the dangerous moment of contact. Penelope accepts the delay, preparing the longer exchange in which she will test his stories and evidence. Before evening ends, Eumaeus tells Telemachus that he must return to the herd and urges him to guard against the suitors' schemes. Telemachus agrees and asks him to come back the next morning with a fine animal for sacrifice, while Odysseus lets his faithful servant depart without learning the stranger's identity. The secret is therefore still shared only as planned, and Odysseus remains alone among his enemies for the next public test. Book 18. Arnius, the palace beggar nicknamed Urus, resents the newcomer and orders him away from what he considers his own doorway. Antinous turns the quarrel into entertainment, promising choice food and a permanent place to the winner while threatening to send the loser to the brutal king Echetus. Odysseus accepts only after making the suitors promise not to interfere, and he warns Urus that there will be no second bout if the first one settles the matter. When Odysseus raises his rags, Athena lets the strength of his shoulders and limbs show through the disguise, terrifying Urus even as Antinous forces him forward. Odysseus chooses his blow carefully, stopping far short of killing the man, then drags him outside and props him beside the gate as a warning. The suitors cheer and reward the supposed beggar, never understanding that his measured victory has revealed both power and control. Odysseus then speaks privately to Amphinomus, whose conduct has seemed less vicious than that of the others. He describes how quickly human confidence collapses, says the master of the house is near, and urges Amphinomus to leave before violence begins. Amphinomus senses the warning's truth and walks away troubled, but does not go home. The poem marks his greater decency, without erasing his continued participation or his coming death at Telemachus's hand. Athena moves Penelope to appear before the suitors, then deepens her sleep and restores her radiance without Penelope claiming credit for it. Penelope insists that two attendants accompany her, preserving the dignity required of a woman entering a hostile public room. Her descent is therefore a deliberate social move. She enters the suitor's gaze in order to address her son, control the room, and recover resources from men who have consumed her household. Penelope rebukes Telemachus for allowing a guest to be abused, and he answers that he now understands the evil around him, even if he cannot yet expel it openly. She then reminds the suitors that respectable men seeking a wealthy bride bring gifts instead of eating her property, invoking the instructions Odysseus gave before leaving. To maintain their claims, Antinous and the others send costly clothing and jewelry, and the hidden Odysseus silently delights in Penelope's ability to reclaim wealth through their vanity. That evening, Odysseus offers to tend the braziers so the maids can return to Penelope, but Melantho insults him and tries to drive him out. She was raised kindly in this house, yet has become Eurymachus' lover, and her contempt identifies her as an active ally of the occupying men. Eurymachus joins in, mocks the beggar as lazy, and hurls a stool when Odysseus answers that he can work or fight. Odysseus dodges, but a servant is struck, pushing the hall from ridicule into repeated physical violence. Telemachus now speaks as the house's heir and forbids further attacks on either the stranger or the servants. Amphinomus supports the reasonable order, calls for a final libation, and persuades the company to leave for the night rather than continue the quarrel. The suitors are startled by Telemachus' new authority, but withdraw, clearing the hall so father and son can remove the weapons before the next day's contest. Book 19. Once the hall is empty, Odysseus tells Telemachus to carry the helmets, shields, and spears from the walls into the storeroom. If questioned, the young man must say that smoke was damaging the equipment and that exposed iron might tempt drunken guests to fight. Eurycleia keeps the women away while Athena casts a golden light over their work. Telemachus recognizes divine help, but his father orders silence, leaving the suitors disarmed without warning them that a contest is near. Penelope comes down to sit by the fire and question the stranger, only for Melantho to insult him again. Odysseus answers that prosperity is never permanent and warns that Telemachus has reached manhood. Penelope sharply rebukes the maid she once raised, has a fleece-covered seat brought forward, and asks the visitor's origin. The husband and wife now begin testing one another in the same room, although only one of them knows who both participants are. Before demanding his story, Penelope explains the trap that has held her for years. She promised to choose a husband after weaving Laertes' funeral cloth, worked by day and secretly undid the threads by night for 3 years, until a disloyal maid exposed her in the 4th. Meanwhile, her parents press her to remarry. Telemachus sees his estate consumed, and she still resists leaving. The strategy is practical control of time, not passive waiting, and its failure narrows her choices. Odysseus invents the identity of Ethon, a Cretan and brother of Idomeneus, claiming that he once welcomed Odysseus when weather detained the fleet near Amnisus. This is a deliberate fiction designed to place the speaker in the credible role of former host, and Penelope weeps at the thought of the absent man, while Odysseus fixes his face into stillness. Her emotion does not end the inquiry, because she now asks for details that a casual liar would not know. The stranger describes a red-purple cloak fastened by a golden brooch showing a hound holding a fawn, a bright inner tunic, and Eurybates, the dark, round-shouldered attendant with curling hair. Penelope recognizes the garments as those she prepared for her husband and confirms the servant's appearance. These precise objects make the invented witness persuasive, yet they do not prove that Ethon exists or that the man before her is Odysseus, so the test advances without ending. Odysseus next offers supposed news from the Sprotia, where King Phaedon allegedly reported that the wanderer had survived the loss of his companions after the cattle of Helios and had gone to Dodona to seek guidance. Pieces of the route resemble truth, but the meeting and the Cretan messenger remain tactical invention meant to comfort Penelope and manage time. She allows that part may be true while voicing her fear that her husband will never return, then orders Eurycleia to wash the guest's feet. Odysseus turns his leg toward the shadows, but Eurycleia's hands find the old scar. It came from a boar hunt on Parnassus in his youth, when he visited his grandfather Autolycus, held his ground after the animal tore his thigh, and was carried home to be healed. The nurse drops the basin as memory confirms touch. Athena turns Penelope's attention away, while Odysseus covers Eurycleia's mouth and binds her to secrecy, allowing recognition by the body without prematurely exposing the plan. Penelope then tells the stranger of 20 geese feeding in her yard, and an eagle that kills them before declaring itself Odysseus and the geese her suitors. Even with that interpretation inside the dream, she distinguishes the ivory gate of deceptive visions from the horn gate of truth, and refuses to surrender judgment to sleep alone. She announces that tomorrow she will set 12 axes in line and marry whoever can string Odysseus's bow and shoot through them, turning uncertainty into a public test. Book 20. Odysseus lies awake in the forehall and hears disloyal maids laughing as they slip away to the suitors, and his first impulse is to punish them immediately. He commands his own heart to endure as it endured inside the Cyclops' cave, where acting too soon would have destroyed every chance of escape. Athena appears, assures him that even a far larger armed force could not overcome him with her aid, and gives him sleep. Restraint remains an active weapon, preserving the chosen hour. Upstairs during the same night, Penelope begs Artemis for a gentle death rather than a life beside a man inferior to Odysseus. She recalls a dream in which someone exactly like her husband lay beside her, and waking turns that brief comfort into deeper pain. Husband and wife suffer under one roof without yet recognizing each other openly, and Penelope's wish expresses despair under forced remarriage, not any betrayal of her absent husband. At dawn, hearing Penelope's grief, Odysseus asks Zeus for one sign outside and one meaningful voice within the house. Thunder sounds from a clear sky, and the last of 12 exhausted mill women hears it and prays that this will be the suitors' final feast. The god sends the sign, while a laboring woman interprets it from below the palace hierarchy. Their agreement gives Odysseus assurance without requiring him to break disguise. The household prepares for Apollo's festival as though the day were ordinary. Eurycleia orders cleaning and water, Eumaeus brings 3 pigs, and Telemachus attends to public duties. Melanthius arrives with goats for the suitors, insults Odysseus once more, and threatens fresh violence, while the disguised king records the behavior without answering. Loyal servants continue maintaining a house they do not control, and the trader converts the absent master's animals into favor with the occupiers. Philodius, the master cowherd, arrives with livestock and weeps because the unknown beggar resembles the king he imagines wandering in equal poverty. He has considered abandoning an estate whose cattle are consumed by the suitors, yet loyalty to Telemachus and hope for Odysseus have kept him there. The stranger swears by Zeus, the guest table, and the house that Philodius will see his master return. Eumaeus joins the prayer, establishing both herdsmen as willing allies before either receives an order. At the meal, Telemachus gives Odysseus an equal portion and warns that no one may strike his guest. Ctesippus answers with a mock gift, throwing an ox hoof that Odysseus avoids, and Telemachus declares that a hit would have turned the offender's wedding feast into a funeral. Athena then drives the suitors into wild laughter mixed with tears and makes their food appear uncanny. Their refusal to understand this final moral and supernatural warning brings the contest closer. Theoclymenus sees darkness covering the suitors' faces, blood upon the walls and beams, ghosts crowding toward Erebus, and the sun erased in mist. Eurymachus laughs at him as mad and orders him out, but the seer insists that his sight and mind are sound, then leaves for Phaeacians' house after announcing that no suitor will escape the approaching disaster. The last explicit warning is rejected in the room where it will be fulfilled, while Telemachus watches his father for the signal to act. Book 21. Athena moves Penelope to open the storeroom and bring out the bow Odysseus left behind, and she weeps as she holds it. Iphitus had given him this weapon at Messenia when the two men met over missing livestock and horses, before Heracles killed Iphitus in violation of their bond. Penelope carries the bow and quiver into the hall and orders Eumaeus to place 12 socketed axes in a straight line, bringing her absent husband's private weapon into the center of the household crisis. Before the assembled suitors, Penelope declares that she will leave the home of her marriage with the man who can string Odysseus's bow and send one arrow through all 12 axe heads. This is an announced marriage condition, not entertainment staged by the disguised king. Each claimant must now measure the authority he has assumed against the absent master's actual strength, and every failure will expose that difference before the whole hall. Telemachus sets the axes with surprising precision and tries the bow himself, partly as heir and partly to preserve his role in public. 3 times he strains, and on the 4th he nearly succeeds, but Odysseus gives a hidden signal, and the sun stops rather than spoil their timing. Telemachus jokes that he is still too young, lays the bow down, and invites the suitors to try, yielding the decisive display of skill to his father by choice rather than simple weakness. Leides, the suitor's ritual attendant, makes the first attempt and cannot bend the bow, then predicts that it will bring death to many men in the room. Antinous rebukes him, has Melanthius prepare fire and fat to warm the weapon, and proposes that they suspend the contest because the day belongs to Apollo, sacrificing goats and resuming tomorrow. A troubling omen is thus covered by respectable ritual language, while the bow remains in the hall long enough for Odysseus to finish his preparations. Outside, Odysseus asks Eumaeus and Philodius whether they would support their master or the suitors if Odysseus suddenly returned. Both pray for the king's return and promise to fight for him, so he names himself and shows the Parnassus scar as proof, then promises each man a home, a family, and honor beside Telemachus. Their tears confirm chosen loyalty, but Odysseus makes them master their emotion before anyone inside can notice. Odysseus assigns the machinery of isolation as carefully as any weapon. Eumaeus must carry the bow to him and tell Eurycleia to lock the women's quarters, keeping the maids inside even if they hear shouting. Philodius must shut the outer court gate and bind it fast with a ship's cable. The 3 men return separately, so the suitors do not see a new alliance forming while every exit, source of reinforcement, and channel of information closes. Eurymachus also fails with the warmed bow and admits that humiliation before future generations hurts more than losing Penelope. When the beggar asks merely to test whether his hands retain any strength, Antinous insults him and threatens Echitus, while Penelope answers that success would earn the stranger clothing, weapons, and safe passage, not her hand. Telemachus then asserts that the bow is his property, sends his mother upstairs, and orders Eumaeus to deliver it despite the suitors' threats. Eumaeus places the bow in Odysseus's hands as Eurycleia locks the women in and Philaudius secures the gate. Odysseus examines horn and joinery, strings it as easily as a musician tunes a lyre, and the chord sings. Zeus answers with thunder as the suitors lose color. Still seated, Odysseus sends one arrow cleanly through all 12 axes, then signals Telemachus, who straps on sword and spear and takes his place beside his father. Book 22. Odysseus throws off his beggar's rags at the threshold, pours the arrows at his feet, and says one target remains. His next shot brings down Antinous as the man raises a cup. The suitors first call it an accident and search the walls for weapons that Telemachus has already removed. Odysseus then names himself and charges them with consuming his estate, pressing his wife, violating the household, and scorning divine and human law, ending every ambiguity about the contest. Eurymachus tries to separate the group from its fallen leader, blaming Antinous for the murder plot and offering repayment in gold, bronze, and livestock. Odysseus refuses to sell absolution for a shared occupation of his home. Eurymachus rushes him with a sword and is stopped, while Amphinomus attacks and falls to Telemachus from behind. Negotiation gives way to open battle, and the sun moves from guarding the plan to fighting within it. Telemachus runs to the storeroom and brings 4 shields, 8 spears, and 4 helmets for his father, himself, Eumaeus, and Philaudius. Odysseus uses the remaining arrows, then takes shield and spear. But armed suitors soon appear, and Telemachus realizes that he failed to lock the storeroom after their earlier work. The concrete mistake creates the defenders' only serious logistical breach, and shows that victory has not been made effortless by divine favor. Melanthius has found a narrow route to the store and carries armor out to the suitors, then turns back for more. Eumaeus and Philaudius watch the passage, seize him on his next trip, bind his limbs, and suspend him from a roof beam where he cannot continue supplying either side. The 2 servants whose loyalty was tested only moments ago now repair Telemachus's error, while Melanthius remains alive for judgment after the hall is secured. Athena enters in the likeness of Mentor, and Odysseus appeals to the old family friend, while Aegialos threatens Mentor with death and confiscation. The goddess reproaches Odysseus for showing less courage than at Troy, then becomes a swallow high on the beam instead of solving the battle at once. Her presence confirms the side she supports, but the human alliance must still hold the doorway and prove its discipline. Under Aegialos's command, a first group of suitors throws spears, but Athena sends the weapons into post, door, and wall, allowing the 4 defenders to answer and force the crowd backward. A second exchange leaves only slight wounds on Telemachus and Eumaeus before Odysseus's group breaks the remaining formation. Philaudius confronts Ctesippus and returns the memory of his insulting ox-hoof gift. Athena finally displays her terrible shield, turning a controlled defense into the collapse of the suitors' resistance without acting as the sole combatant. Leides clings to Odysseus and argues that he never abused the women and sometimes opposed the suitors' worst behavior, serving only as their ritual attendant. Odysseus rejects the plea because Leides still supported the group and prayed for its success in taking the house and Penelope. The refusal is a notably severe judgment within the epic's settlement, and the narration can preserve that distinction without pretending it is an untroubled modern legal verdict. Phemius next pleads that the suitors compelled him to sing and cites Telemachus as his witness. Telemachus tells his father to spare the innocent bard and Medon as well, recalling that the herald cared for him from childhood. Hearing this, Medon emerges from concealment and pleads. Odysseus says that his son has saved him and sends both men outside to safety near the altar. Coercion, protective conduct, and Telemachus's testimony, therefore create explicit exceptions to collective punishment. Eurycleia identifies 12 of the 50 maids as disloyal to Penelope and associated with the suitors. Odysseus requires them to clear and clean the hall before they receive a harsh collective punishment, while Melanthius is also punished for repeated insults, theft of the household's animals, and direct delivery of arms. The consequences are stated without dwelling on bodily suffering, yet the group judgment remains visible rather than being softened out of the story. When Eurycleia tries to cry out in triumph, Odysseus stops her, saying it is wrong to celebrate over the dead. He orders sulfur and fire used to purify the hall and courtyard, then calls the loyal women, who come with torches and embrace their returned master. The space begins to become a home again, but the many dead sons of Ithaca have families, so cleansing the room cannot yet restore political peace. Book 23. Eurycleia runs upstairs to wake Penelope and announce that Odysseus has returned and defeated the suitors. Penelope suspects that age has confused the nurse, or that a god punished the men, because one human being could hardly overcome such a crowd. Eurycleia cites the boar scar she touched while washing his feet and his demand for secrecy. Penelope agrees to go down and see the victor, but refuses to call him her husband before testing what she has heard. In the purified hall, Penelope sits across the fire from Odysseus, who still wears the beggar's clothing, and alternately sees a familiar face and an exhausted stranger. Telemachus accuses her of having a heart of stone, but she answers that husband and wife possess secret signs known only to themselves, and that impostors have long exploited her hope. Odysseus understands that her distance is a demand for proper evidence, so recognition is delayed one final time. Odysseus turns briefly from reunion to the political danger created by the deaths of so many powerful sons. He orders bathing, clean clothes, music from Phemius, and dancing that will sound outside like Penelope's wedding, making the city misread the noise while his group gains time to reach Laertes' farm. The apparent celebration is a screen against immediate retaliation, not simple rejoicing after victory. After Odysseus bathes, Athena restores the imposing height, hair, and shoulders Penelope remembers, but appearance alone still does not settle her doubt. He complains of her reserve and tells Eurycleia to move his bed outside so he can sleep apart. Penelope answers with a deliberately false order to carry out the bed her husband built. That command touches a fact no stranger should understand and turns a general suspicion into a precise test. Odysseus protests that the bed cannot be moved because he built the chamber around a living olive tree, shaped its trunk into one bedpost, completed and ornamented the frame, then stretched red leather across it. Only Odysseus, Penelope, and the old attendant Actorus had known this construction. Penelope trembles and embraces him, recognizing not a symbol alone but private knowledge of shared labor that an impostor could not reproduce. Penelope asks forgiveness for her caution and explains that clever strangers have always threatened to deceive her, recalling Helen as a woman drawn into a disastrous error. She and Odysseus cling to each other and weep, while Athena delays dawn so their recovered night will not end too quickly. The test now appears as Penelope's equivalent of Odysseus's own disciplined suspicion, not as coldness toward a man she was obliged to recognize on command. Odysseus tells Penelope that Tiresias left him one more obligation. He must carry an oar inland until someone mistakes it for a winnowing fan, plant it there, sacrifice to Poseidon, return home, honor all the gods, and eventually meet a peaceful death in old age. The couple then exchanged the history's separation denied them, from Penelope's besieged household to Odysseus's entire wandering. Reunion closes the broken chronology between them. without erasing the future act of reconciliation still required. At dawn, Odysseus tells Penelope and the women to remain upstairs, speak with no visitors, and ask no questions, promising that the depleted herds will be restored. He arms Telemachus, Eumaeus, and Philodius and leads them out of the palace toward Laertes, while Athena covers the four men in darkness. The wedding music and concealed departure together postpone the city's response rather than canceling it. Book 24. Hermes leads the suitors' souls past Ocean, the White Rock, the gates of the sun, and the country of dreams into Hades. There they meet Achilles, Patroclus, Telemachus, Ajax, and Agamemnon, who is comparing Achilles' honored burial with his own treacherous death. The newcomers, therefore, enter a world already measuring fame, loyalty, and post-war loss, and Agamemnon is prepared to ask why so many noble Ithacans died together. Amphion recounts the courtship from the defeated side. Penelope delayed them for 3 years by weaving and unweaving Laertes' shroud until a maid betrayed the device, while Odysseus returned through Eumaeus' hut, joined Telemachus, and endured the palace in disguise. He describes the bow contest, the arrow through the axes, the closed hall, and divine assistance in their defeat. His account admits the sequence, while framing its tellers as victims rather than neutral judges. Agamemnon responds by praising Penelope's fidelity and declaring that song will preserve her name, contrasting her with Clytemnestra, who joined Aegisthus in betraying a returning husband. The judgment gives Penelope lasting honor in the community of the dead. Yet praise below the earth does nothing to reconcile the living families above it, and the story returns to Ithaca before grief becomes another attack. At Laertes' orchard, Odysseus sends Telemachus and the 2 herdsmen inside to prepare food, then finds his father in patched, dirty work clothes digging around a tree. Though moved to tears, he tests Laertes by claiming to be a son of King of Phaeacians from Alybas who once welcomed Odysseus. The fiction drives the old man into open grief. Seeing the pain he has caused, Odysseus ends the trial and declares that the lost son stands before him. Laertes still requires proof that comfort has not produced another life. Odysseus shows the Parnassus scar and recalls the exact trees given to him as a child: 13 pear trees, 10 apples, 40 figs, and 50 rows of vines ripening in sequence. Laertes' knees weaken and his heart recognizes the shared memory, and father and son embrace. Only then do they leave the orchard for the farmhouse, with Athena's restoration still to come. Inside, the elderly Sicilian servant bathes Laertes, oils him, and clothes him properly, and only after that sequence does Athena add strength and stature to his body. Dolios and his sons return from the fields, recognize Odysseus, and join the small, loyal company around the meal. Dolios remains the faithful estate keeper and must not be confused with the treacherous Melanthius or Melantho. As they gather, rumor is already carrying the palace news through the city. The dead are recovered, and their relatives assemble in Ithaca, where Eupeithes turns grief for Antinous into a call for immediate revenge. Medon reports that he saw Athena in Mentor's form supporting Odysseus, and Halitherses reminds the people that they ignored earlier warnings while their sons consumed the estate and dishonored Penelope. Some citizens stay behind, but many arm themselves under Eupeithes, proving that judgment inside one house has produced a civic crisis outside it. Athena asks Zeus whether conflict should continue, and he orders a settlement in which the killing is put away and Odysseus remains king. When the armed relatives reach the farm, Athena strengthens Laertes, who prays and brings down Eupeithes. Odysseus and Telemachus are ready to press the attack when Athena commands both sides to stop, and Zeus confirms her order with thunder. Odysseus obeys, and Athena in Mentor's likeness imposes oaths of peace, ending the epic with violence halted by divine authority, rather than a reconciliation the community achieved for itself. Now that we have followed all 24 books, Odysseus's recovery of his house does not close every question the epic has opened. We still have to ask who may shape the past, what evidence allows a person to be recognized as himself, and how quickly justice can become revenge. Those questions are not additional events invented after the story. They arise from the scenes, decisions, and competing voices the poem has already presented. First, the epic's nonlinear structure gives unusual power to acts of narration. The story does not begin when Odysseus leaves Troy, but in a damaged Ithaca. It then moves to Odyssey, and only in books 9 through 12 lets Odysseus organize his earlier wanderings for the Phaeacians. The audience therefore encounters consequences before causes. We know that Helios's cattle doomed the crew, and that Poseidon is angry, but the decisions producing those outcomes arrive later through Odysseus's account. From that structure, one may infer that Odysseus survives partly by becoming the curator of his own memory before a community capable of carrying him home. The interruption in Book 11 reminds us that his tale has listeners who judge its skill and credibility, and Amphinom's later account reframes the palace battle from the defeated side. That retelling does not erase the suitor's occupation of the house. It does show that the same sequence can acquire a different moral emphasis, depending on who speaks after it. Odysseus does not, however, control the whole poem. The epic narrator shows divine counsels, Helios demanding punishment, and events in Ithaca that Odysseus never witnessed, so it would be excessive to dismiss every adventure merely because he narrates it. Telemachus supplies another limit. Another man's song makes Odysseus weep and eventually forces him to reveal his name. Epic truth emerges through competing tellers, yet it retains shared checkpoints such as the bow, the axes, the disguise, the scar, and Athena's visible interventions. The flexible intelligence called Medes operates across the entire work. It appears in the name Nobody, the invented Cretan identities, the secret knot, the beggar's disguise, the removal of the weapons, and the music that makes the palace sound like a wedding after the battle. Within the story, these devices create room to survive when direct strength is insufficient. But the escape from Polyphemus also provides the sharpest counterexample, because Odysseus abandons anonymity and pride and gives the Cyclops the name needed to call Poseidon against him. The limit of Medes also appears in relationships, not only in that moment of boasting. Odysseus correctly reads the danger at Ismarus, in the wind bag, and on Thrinacia, yet his judgment does not create lasting discipline among the crew. Before Scylla, he conceals the certain cost from the rowers and carries weapons despite Circe's warning, revealing both the burden and the limits of command. Individual intelligence may find an exit, but it cannot by itself manufacture trust, agreement, or durable leadership. For that reason, the success of disguise should not be taken as praise for every lie Odysseus tells. Eumaeus welcomes the stranger while rejecting his promise that the master will soon return. Penelope listens to the Cretan story, then tests the cloak, brooch, attendant, and later the bed. Medes works best when it purchases time for evidence to emerge. When it becomes self-display or demands belief without verification, it produces new danger rather than mastery. Xenia, the law of hospitality, is the epic's most persistent social measure. Telemachus receives Athena before asking her identity. Nestor and Menelaus feed strangers before questioning them. Nausicaa, Arete, Alcinous, and Eumaeus protect vulnerable guests under very different conditions. Against them stand Polyphemus, who scorns Zeus's protection of strangers, the suitors who consume a host's estate, and Ctesippus, who mockingly turns an ox hoof into a guest gift. Hospitality is therefore tested through material conduct, not polite claims. Yet Xenia is not a simple guarantee of unlimited service. Iolaus refuses a second request after the winds return Odysseus to his island. The Phaeacians pay for their generosity with a petrified ship, and Telemachus accepts the fugitive Theoclymenus while he himself is being hunted. These cases show that welcoming a stranger involves risk, judgment, and sometimes conditions. The law decides whether an unknown person will be treated as a human being with claims upon others, or as prey, labor, entertainment, or profit. Viewed more broadly, hospitality forms a reciprocal political network. A host offers a place, food, gifts, information, or passage. A guest respects the household, reveals identity at an appropriate time, and carries the host's reputation into another community. The gifts of Nestor, Menelaus, and Alcinous are consequently more than treasure. They are evidence that a previously unknown traveler has been recognized by households with public authority, and that recognition helps transform wandering into a possible return. Penelope deserves to be read as an intelligence equal in kind, not as a motionless prize at the journey's end. The epic gives her the 3-year weaving deception, the recovery of gifts from the suitors, the decision to establish the bow contest, her caution toward Euryclea's report, and the apparently impossible order to move the bed. Each action manages time, information, or proof inside a household where she possesses limited direct force. Her waiting is sustained work under pressure, not empty passivity. That agency does not mean Penelope secretly controls every result. A maid exposes the weaving, her relatives and Telemachus add pressure to remarry, and the bow contest could have produced a new marriage if Odysseus had not returned at that moment. The secure facts are that Penelope sets conditions, gathers gifts, and retains the authority to believe or doubt. The claim that she knows her husband's entire plan in advance remains an attractive speculation, but no scene confirms it. The olive tree bed clarifies the nature of her intelligence. The poem states that Odysseus shaped a living trunk into a bedpost and built the chamber around it, and that only a tiny circle knew the construction. One may interpret the bed as a marriage with roots. It cannot be carried away as a prize to whoever wins public power. It joins private memory, shared labor, and continuing life in an object whose truth depends on what the couple made together. Telemachus has a genuine coming-of-age story, but the epic does not turn him into a flawless copy of his father. He learns to speak in assembly, travel for knowledge, receive Theoclymenus, guard secrets, protect a guest, and stand armed beside Odysseus. He almost strings the bow but stops at the hidden signal, then later forgets to lock the weapons room and allows Melanthius to supply the opposition. Growth and fallibility remain visible at the same time. That mistake keeps Telemachus in the position of a young person still learning rather than an heir made perfect by one voyage. His role in the harsh punishment of the disloyal maids is also open to modern ethical criticism. The word maturity cannot automatically justify every decision he makes. Moreover, his progress depends on a network the poem openly displays. Athena, Nestor, Menelaus, Pisistratus, Eumaeus, and Paris each provide transport, knowledge, protection, or trusted custody when his own authority is not enough. The first Ithacan assembly shows the limits of his political independence especially clearly. Telemachus speaks with new force, but his speech does not make the community intervene, and Athena must still obtain the ship and route. His decision to protect Theoclymenus and his respectful treatment of strangers reveal a more complete growth in obligation than in sovereign power. The distinction matters because becoming responsible is not the same as becoming able to command an entire society. The second half of the epic also forms a layered system of recognition. Argus knows Odysseus through sense and memory. Eurycleia knows the scar on his body. Eumaeus and Philodius receive a spoken identity joined to the scar and promises for the future. Penelope uses the secret of the bed. Laertes requires both the scar and the trees he once gave his child. These are distinct events, not one proof repeated for dramatic ornament. From those differences, identity in the Odyssey may be understood as relational. No universal sign is sufficient for everyone, because each bond preserves a different kind of shared past. Recognition also rises through levels of participation. Argus cannot speak. Eurycleia is ordered to remain silent. The herdsmen become active allies. Penelope designs her own test, and Laertes asks for a personal history rooted in the orchard. To return is therefore not merely to stand on Ithacan soil, but to be called back into several relationships by the memories proper to each. The bow establishes an important limit to this system. Stringing it and shooting through the axes proves Odysseus's unique skill in public, but it does not require Penelope to abandon her private test, and it does not persuade the dead suitor's relatives to accept his authority. Correct identification cannot by itself settle what the identified person is entitled to do. The poem separates the question of who Odysseus is from the political and ethical question of what follows from his return. Songs, prophecies, bird signs, dreams, and invented biographies create several systems of knowledge with different degrees of reliability. Phemius and Demodocus preserve communal memory. Proteus and Tiresias provide conditional information. Helen, Halitherses, and Theoclymenus interpret omens. Penelope distinguishes dreams that pass through ivory from those passing through horn. Odysseus's Cretan stories mix factual fragments with fictional identity. The epic never treats every sacred-sounding message as immediate recognition, nor every fiction as wholly empty of truth. Each channel consequently demands its own form of judgment. Song can preserve fame and still wound those who lived through the event. Prophecy often specifies conduct whose fulfillment depends on a later choice. Bird signs require interpreters and may be mocked by listeners. Penelope's dream explains itself, yet she still questions its gate. Odysseus's false stories are most difficult because a few accurate details do not make the whole account honest. Credibility must be tested piece by piece rather than granted by category. The poem repeatedly presents a warning and then leaves room for action. The suitors hear Halitherses, encounter Zeus's thunder, and witness Theoclymenus' vision, but remain in the palace. Odysseus's crew is warned more than once about Helios's cattle, and still breaks the oath under hunger and Eurylochus's persuasion. One may therefore read prophecy not as a device that erases responsibility, but as a test of what people choose after consequences have been named. The Odyssey is also a post-war work. Menelaus returns late and wealthy, but burdened by those he lost. Agamemnon reaches home only to die there. Ajax keeps his grievance even among the dead. Achilles says that the poorest life is better than dominion in Hades. Odysseus survives but loses every companion and cannot walk openly into his own palace. These five outcomes dismantle the easy assumption that victory at Troy means war is over. Their differences concern damaged relationships as much as fortune. Menelaus recovers household and wealth but carries communal loss. Agamemnon loses safety within marriage. Ajax cannot repair fellowship. Achilles withdraws his earlier valuation of glory once life is gone. Odysseus applies military methods to his home. It is reasonable to describe these as post-war consequences. It would be less responsible to assign the heroes a precise modern diagnosis that the epic itself never states. Odysseus brings habits of war into Ithaca through reconnaissance, disguise, alliance testing, weapons control, locked doors, and manipulated information. The olive bed briefly leads him outside that logic because it is neither trophy nor weapon, but a shared structure built around living growth. Even reunion does not remove every obligation created by the voyage. Tiresias still requires him to carry the oar inland and establish a different relationship with Poseidon where the sea is unknown. Finally, the epic asks where justice ends and retaliation begins. Its facts are specific. The suitors do more than seek Penelope's hand, for they consume the estate, abuse guests, coerce the household, and plot Telemachus's death, while Antinous, Eurymachus, and Ctesippus commit distinct offenses. The poem also distinguishes some cases. Phemius is spared because he sang under coercion, Medon because he protected Telemachus, Amphinomus receives a warning but stays, and Leides asks for mercy yet is denied it. Those distinctions are real, but they do not amount to a consistent procedure for judging every individual. Amphinomus behaves with relative restraint and is privately warned, yet remains part of the group. Leides claims to have opposed its worst acts, but is treated as a servant of the occupation. Phemius and Medon survive through witnesses accepted by the victors. The evidence reveals different levels of responsibility. It also shows how strongly the final decision depends on who controls the room and whose testimony is allowed to count. Within the epic's value system, the gods approve Odysseus's punishment of those who seized his household. From a modern ethical perspective, unease remains justified about collective liability, the absence of an individual hearing for each person, the treatment of the 12 maids and Melanthius, and the nearly absolute authority claimed by the master of the house. That unease does not require pretending that the ancient poem shares modern institutions. It requires separating what the narrative reports and endorses from the judgment a present-day audience may make. The position of the maids deserves particular care because dependency limits their power in ways unlike those of aristocratic men. Eurycleia identifies them as disloyal and connected to the suitors, but the poem gives no individual account of coercion, choice, or circumstance. Melanthius, by contrast, repeatedly insults Odysseus, transfers household animals to the occupiers, and personally carries weapons from the store, actions witnessed during the conflict. The asymmetry of evidence makes it difficult for a modern reader to treat all 13 cases as ethically identical. The ending itself demonstrates that retaliation cannot create peace by its own momentum. Relatives of the dead take up arms, Laertes kills Eupes, and Odysseus is ready to continue, until Athena commands a halt and Zeus confirms it with thunder. The restored order is not negotiated by the community. It is imposed by divine power at the edge of another round of violence. One more delay would have produced another death, demanding another answer. Zeus's settlement includes putting away the memory of killing so that Odysseus may remain king. In the epic's world, this works because Athena and the thunder possess authority sufficient to stop armed men. Through a modern political lens, it is not restorative reconciliation. The families do not jointly establish responsibility, compensation, or a new way to live together. The command ends the immediate danger, but it does not show grief transformed through civic consent. Even so, the divine intervention has a necessary narrative function that should not be ignored. Ithaca's first assembly failed. Both sides now possess weapons, and any human mediator could be dismissed as belonging to one faction. Divine command becomes the epic mechanism for cutting a feud that the community's institutions cannot contain. It is simultaneously an effective ending within the poem and evidence of the political fragility of the order being restored. The conclusion therefore repairs the household while exposing the limits of justice founded on vengeance. Peace is necessary, but the manner in which it arrives remains a question rather than a timelessly satisfying solution. Odysseus returns not only with Phaeacian gifts or title to a palace, but as Laertes' son, Penelope's husband, Telemachus' father, and the master remembered by Argus, Eumaeus, and Philaudius. Each role requires a different proof, and home becomes a network of relationships strong enough to recognize a person after catastrophe, and wise enough, at the final moment, to stop violence before every return creates another exile. If you found this video useful, please like it, subscribe to the Will Read Book channel, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss our next book summaries and analyses. Thank you for listening. See you again in the next videos on the Will Read Book channel.